And do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. So we've been talking a lot about questions, and one of the questions that came up was, how do we know that God is in control of all these bad things that happen? And we've been talking about how He has a purpose and a plan for everything, but how does God provide in those times when things are going wrong? How does God care for us when things go wrong? Well, there's one such story in the Bible, in the book called Ruth. It's a short little book, and it's about this family that things go horribly wrong. And well, it starts with Naomi. Naomi is this woman, and she's married to this guy, and she ends up having 2 kids, and things are going great. 2 kids get married, but then her husband dies, and with the family they move away, and the 2 sons that she had die also, and she's left with her 2 daughter-in-laws that aren't her direct family, but because it all just happens so quickly, and she's upset. She doesn't know what to do, and so she tells her daughter-in-laws, like, go back to your home country, go back to where they can take care of you, because I can't. And they do, kind of. We read what happens in verse 14. At this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. I find it interesting that it describes Ruth as clinging to Naomi, that she clung to her. She was so committed to loving Naomi that she sacrificed everything. She could have gone away and gone to her own homeland, and things would have been great, and she had a lot of places and people to help her as after the death of her husband. But she clings to Naomi and goes with Naomi back to Naomi's homeland, and they struggle there. They are trying to make a living, and Ruth ends up day by day going out to all these different fields to pick the leftovers that other men had done in the fields, and she finds her way to this field of this man named Boaz, and she's trying to help Naomi, and she does what she normally does and picks up all the leftovers in the field. Well, Boaz notices Ruth, and he asks about her and finds this backstory behind why Ruth came to be in this area, and he was compelled by her story that she had sacrificed everything to still stay with her mother-in-law even though her husband had died. And so he ends up going to Ruth and saying, hey, stay here, I'll protect you, don't worry about it, you can have whatever you want, you don't have to worry about people shunning you out or pushing you out of this field, this is for you. Ruth ends up going day by day to the same field and ends up laying at the feet of Boaz one night. This is an interesting part of the story, because at first I was like, why does she lay at the feet of this guy? And well, it turns out that in that time that they could have lost their land and lost their home. And the only way for them to save it is for them to find a kinsman redeemer, somebody within their family that can redeem them and buy off the land and pay the debt and save them. And as to these 2 women by themselves, they couldn't do it. They needed somebody, a man of good repute and honorable to do that. And so when she goes, she lays at the feet of her Redeemer, the one guy that can save her and Naomi. It's a way of her submitting and following and trying to say, please help me, I will do whatever you ask. And so she lays at the feet of Boaz, and he wakes up and finds her and is startled, but is compelled by her story again and goes, all right, in verse 11, we find out what happens. This is what is said. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am near of kin, this is a kinsman redeemer nearer than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem, good. Let him redeem. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until the morning. Boaz steps up and becomes the man, the kinsman redeemer, to save this couple. He ends up going and collecting elders and talking about it, and goes to this other guy that could have saved him. But then when Boaz points out, you have to take care of these other girls, these ladies, the other guy backs out. Boaz steps up and redeems them and buys out their whole debt, all of their land, and saves them. There's two instances in the story of people sacrificing for one another, of loving people. It's incredible. Marissa and Morgan love to tell stories. They love to share their favorite memories and moments of all the different things that they did in their lives. And one of them, Morgan, talked about baking. It was a time where they were up at the cabin in Oregon, and out there they had these vines and bushes of all these different delicious berries, and they would go each day and pick some of them and eat them. They were so good. Well, they thought, like, hey, what can we do with these? They brought a whole bunch of them inside, and they started looking through the cupboards like, oh, let's make muffins. And so they got everything they thought they needed for muffins, except they recognized they didn't have any baking powder. So they were like, well, we need to make these muffins. They're gonna be so delicious, so good. And so they got in the car, they hopped in and drove out 20 minutes to the nearest market to try to find some baking powder. Well, they found some. They brought it back and they started mixing and baking and got the oven preheated. Everything was going well. They put all the stuff together and they put the muffins in the oven. A little while later, they brought them out, they let them cool. They took the first bite and didn't quite taste the way they thought they would. Then they realized sitting on the counter next to them was the baking powder. They had forgotten to include the very thing they had to drive 20 minutes out to go get. They had forgotten one of the biggest basic ingredients in order to make this beautiful, delicious muffins. And it made a difference in what happened in them. They had forgotten an ingredient. So you know, in baking, it's important you get all of the right ingredients. Well, the same thing is true in our life. We read in Hebrews that, and do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. He's saying it's important. You don't forget this. If you try to live life and you forget this point, it's not going to turn out the way you really want it to. Just like in baking and in a story of Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz. Both Ruth and Boaz showed in their lives a sacrificing, giving to others, doing something for others. They didn't forget to do good. But I know I sometimes do. I sometimes get caught up in trying to do the thing I want to do, or get caught up in things going not the way I really want them to. That sometimes I forget to do good for others, to sacrifice for others. That's the challenge I read when I read this story and in Hebrews. That I have to be careful not to forget to love others. Love God first, but I have to sacrifice and do things for others. And out of that, God will be pleased. And I mean, take Ruth. Did you guys catch that? Ruth first was day by day sacrificing. She was going to the fields and taking up just the leftovers, anything she could get. But she was living a life of service to Naomi. And it was because of that, we read in verse 11, that because of that she was known by that story. And that is what compelled Boaz to then go the extra step to say, you don't have to worry about it. I'll take care of you. It was her living out her belief of loving others that her Redeemer saved her. Our Redeemer wants to save us, but we have to confess it with our mouth that, hey, I need help, and believe it, live it out, that is how we are saved. He's there for us, but we have to lay our head at His feet, asking for that help, submitting, saying, I'm going to follow you, but I need your help. So just like Ruth, we need to do the same thing. Lay our head at His feet and say, God, help us. We need you. But live it out. Do good for others. Let us not forget that.